I started season 1 of this podcast leaning into my favorite Michael Eisner quote on how brands are enriched or undermined cumulatively over time, the product of 1,000 small gestures. Over and over, I've nodded at that same quote with the same level of dedication that he breathed into 1990s Disney, and guess what? I'm doing it again. Why? Because today we're exploring my unabashed favorite of the strong brand A's in the A game, the need for authenticity. Hi, my name is Amy Jackson. I'm a creative director, award-winning designer, color nerd, and unapologetic brand evangelist. And this is Brand is Not a Four-Letter Word. Listen, authenticity isn't a vibe. I know it can feel like it could be. It could be something that you just have to have a feeling for in the moment, something that might shift with time based on experience and engagement, but no. It's actually real structural alignment between what you say, what you do, and how you show up over and over with your 1,000 small gestures. Thank you, Mr. Eisner. Right? Authenticity isn't just about your brand voice being casual or your aesthetic being crisp. It's not a trend you can hop on and off like the latest meme. It's not about being overly transparent to the point of rawness. It's about being consistently honest. Authentic brands tell the truth about and to whom they serve. That means they consistently weigh in on things before taking action, and sometimes they even say no to their audiences or to specific positioning/messaging or opportunities themselves. And trust me, as a small business owner, I know KNOW how hard saying no in OW can be. But that's the thing. Authenticity is just as much about what it is as what it is not, and that's how it builds trust. Brand authenticity shows up in your brand's character and values, in your positioning, your pricing, your language, your visual cues, and especially in your communication with your customers and the experiences they have, even your employees. Authenticity is earned over time, but it can be lost in a moment when trust is broken. I mentioned them briefly in our last episode, but for more than 25 years, the communications firm Edelman has studied consumer trust because they, in my opinion correctly, consider it to be the ultimate currency in a relationship that all institutions, their words, build with their stakeholders. Edelman defines trust as an organization's license to operate, lead, and success. They believe it's the foundation that allows a brand to take responsible risks and, when mistakes are inevitably made, rebound from them. And now they emphatically believe that trust is the primary purchase driver. They created a report called the Edelman Trust Barometer to share their findings about belief-driven buying, which consistently shows consumers' purchasing behavior is heavily influenced by brand values, with 64% of respondents in recent reports choosing, switching, or avoiding brands based on their stance on societal issues. Further, they report high brand trust drives loyalty, with 75% of consumers saying that they will buy a trusted brand even if it's not the cheapest. But, and here's the big kicker, when we think about authenticity, Edelman's also reports that consumers expect brands to address those issues rather than just engage in superficial marketing about them. So in order to build brand trust, it's not enough to declare your values. You have to live by them, which is in essence being authentic. A few seconds ago, I mentioned brands being able to rebound from mistakes made because of that trust and authenticity. Remember how I mentioned my Mapsident in the Aspiration-Focused podcast episode? I was driving to an appointment when all of a sudden my phone's map app stopped delivering directions to me, and I was suddenly very aware of how lost I would soon be and also potentially late. It turns out it was due to a bug in Verizon's code, and it took almost a day to fix. Meanwhile, my ability to communicate and frankly find myself were drastically inhibited. But the next day, Verizon reached out with an apology and a discount for my next billing cycle. They acknowledged that the money didn't make things right, but it was a token towards understanding the trust I'd put in them and the value of my communication needs. And I immediately accepted both their discount and their apology. I still love them because for more than 25 years, gasp, How have I had a cell phone for a quarter of a century? They've shown up in the day in and the day out with good service for me. They built sufficient trust to cover their occasional lack. Now, had they been telling me that they had the most towers and the best service for years, but not delivering on that, that wouldn't have been possible for me to have dismissed, and I would have considered them to be inauthentic long, long ago. So trust and authenticity, not exactly the same thing, but one drives the other. Think of it. You know you've experienced brands who over-polished their positioning or message. They made bold choices and they offered visuals that were stunning, but that didn't match the day-to-day of your experience with them. And you dismissed that. You dismissed them because their brand didn't tell the truth. Or you've engaged with a company who was too big for their britches, as my grandmother might have said. They act like they have this big infrastructure and organization of a big corporation, but they didn't and they weren't, so they lacked what was needed to fulfill that promise, when instead they may have been better to connect with you with a slightly different audience by being authentic about their nimbleness and their flexibility that can come from a small organization. Authenticity actually simplifies your brand decisions because you don't have to create a new narrative or figure out how to keep the song and dance going or put on that ill-fitting persona suit. Your authentic brand will find its people when you show up honestly, build trust, and deliver on those 1,000 gestures. If your brand could use some clarity in how you make those big business decisions, if you're not entirely sure what your audience thinks of you or how you show up, or maybe you're not even sure yourself, it's a great time for a brand audit. Together, you and I, along with as many stakeholders as you decide should attend, will dive into your organization with a proven interview process. Over 90 minutes, we'll gather data and identify holes, and then you'll receive a digital report from me about your brand's strengths and weaknesses. You'll be able to ensure you are building a strong, aspirational, actionable, but most importantly, authentic brand. Because brand isn't a 4-letter word. It's your best strategy and your strongest story. Let's build your brand together. Learn how at brandisnotafourletterword.com, where strategy and storytelling meet design.